You'd have to be mad to settle here.
Hi, Zizaran here with another build guide for the upcoming 3.25 League, and this is another collab with Pox. You already know what it is, and this is going to be a banger. It is a Chieftain, and if you're not familiar with Pox, he knows literally everything about Righteous Fire, and he always ends up playing these himself, so he's able to absolutely help you with everything. This build has its own Wikipedia, so you literally cannot run into any issues that aren't fixable. That being said, the build is not without downsides, and who better to say with what has changed since last league than Pox himself.
So Righteous Fire has received a number of changes. One of the primary ones, ironically, is it actually is going to be buffed on the defensive side with the new changes to block being much more accessible. For players who played this build and felt that whenever they were surrounded, they would kind of die since they didn't have their expensive amulet Defiance of Destiny, that should hopefully no longer be the case with new block changes. Unfortunately, we are going to be weaker at the very late game, and we're talking about kind of like a Dorn no longer league start. So if that doesn't really bother you, then that shouldn't be a problem. One other issue is, unfortunately, our physical mitigation has been lowered as many of us have suffered with the physical taken as removal. On the flip side, we're even tankier against elemental damage.
So what type of player would you say Righteous Fire is for? Like, is it more of a mapper, more of a bosser? I see that we have the explosion. That's gonna feel nice.
Righteous Fire is definitely best played as a mapper on our Chieftain. It offers very easy access into gear. You don't have to worry about cold or lightning res, and you can get right to your map blasting. Any league mechanic that shoves a ton of monsters into your map, you are pretty much good to go. The only exception to this would be, I would say, Legion. Even though it adds a bunch of monsters, you don't have as much explode chance as you'd like, and they're not as close together. But other than that, most league mechanics are totally fine, and of course avoid Sanctum. An example of mapping on this build, you pretty much start the instance, turn on your Righteous Fire, and start to shield charge through your monsters. If monsters are extra tanky, consider throwing a fire trap and using your vulnerability. If there's a really large pack, consider using Infernal Cry or Enduring Cry, depending on if you want to explode them or generate some charges. You're also able sometimes to get the map boss caught in with the explode of the monsters, thus resulting in it instantly dying. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is a potential to happen. For example, here we didn't get the explode. The leveling in this build is going to be pretty straightforward. In the early game, we're going to opt for using Flame Wall and Rolling Magma. Simply go ahead and drop your Flame Wall and shoot the Rolling Magma into it. Once you get to Act 2 and you complete the Chamber of Sins, you're going to be able to run Righteous Fire. All you're going to have to do is make sure you're following the build guide, grab your Fire Mastery, and stack Fire Res. So it looks a little bit like this. Usually when I'm in Act 3 and I'm able to pick up a curse, I actually drop the Flame Wall for flammability. This makes it a lot cleaner to play. Don't forget, later on we're going to swap Rolling Magma over to Fire Trap after it's gotten a few levels.
Ready, Exile! It is time to hunt!
So this is Path of Building. If you're not familiar with how this works, we use it in every one of our videos. It is pretty much mandatory, and I do have a separate video covering how Path of Building works, so make sure you check that out. Pox has put a ton of work into putting different leveling trees so that it's easy and you can see it step by step, and even is using the new loadout feature, and this syncs up your tree, your skills, and your items, so even better than before. So make sure you make use of the loadouts. They actually sync up your skills and items for that section as well. So even more detailed than normal, but we have come to expect a lot from Pox. It's a very fleshed out guide. So loads of extra info here. Make sure you read through it. It's a super handholdy guide and we love Pox for it. And very early now, you can switch to Righteous Fire. There are some notes here as well, but he does have a full standalone Wikipedia that we are going to look at shortly. And then same for the items. You can see here that there are loads of different sections for what gear should look like early. And honestly, it's very nice for solo self-fun because early it is just life and resist, etc. So super easy to follow. And as Pox was saying during the intro, it does do block now. So we can look at sort of the early endgame loadout. So we can see here that we have 2.6 million damage and the gear is not crazy at all. Like a multi-modded weapon, basically a one-stat shield because you really want the life on block here, and coupled with the 75% block chance, you're going to be so incredibly tanky with this. The helmet here is, I think it's just Reforged Fire. These are super easy to make, and later you can go for a Horror Essence helmet. Cloak of Flame for physical mitigation, which is the weak point of the build. And then Pox has added a level 95 version, which has insane gear. So this is not meant to be something that we're expecting you to get. This is like creme de la creme, the best gear you can get kind of thing. For when you're like really investing into the build, like a double corrupted chest. So really good for those that really love this build and want to take it further. Then you do get 8.5 million damage. You're very tanky, good sustain. And you can see here with Annihilation's approach and Rational Doctrine. And this is something I want to ask Pox about, because I feel like Annihilation's approach is something a lot of players mess up. So tell me a little bit about these boots.
So Annihilation's approach are a very unique pair of boots because they actually apply another self-degen onto you on top of your Righteous Fire. The trade-off is you get to go faster than ever with permanent adrenaline, gain bonus physical damage reduction, and a chunk of damage. A great way to help offset the degen is first making sure your fire max res is 90% and also socketing in a Rational Doctrine jewel so you can help combat the degen.
So here we have Rational Doctrine as well. You have Consecrated run around you while stationary if strength is your highest attribute. So, and it makes it a linger, so it's basically like it gives you an Ascendancy. That is something the Inquisitor has. As you can see the defenses here, your Elemental max hit, you're probably never going to die to Elemental damage, because now that Endurance charges also help mitigate Elemental, and we're 90 max stress, it's just incredibly tanky. So something I really want to highlight is pox.net/FAQ, or just like the pox.net website is a Righteous Fire Wikipedia. So it literally has like so many questions. It will have loads of information that will be super useful for your Righteous Fire build, and Pox himself as well. If you haven't already found the answer on the wiki, you can like ask in his chat, but try to find the answer. It is usually explained. He has a super in-depth video himself, and he has this wonderful wiki. Like, it is really wonderful and definitely worth exploring. He puts so much work into this. It is one of the best build guides that exists. So obviously melee is very strong in this league, but if you still want to play Righteous Fire, really good way to do it. Why are we choosing Chieftain this time?
So one of the unique things about Chieftain is they offer some of the best gearing for league starts. There's a node that we get on our normal lab called Salio Cleansing Water. Essentially, if you uncheck this, you'll notice your cold and lightning res go negative. This is because this node makes it so 50% of your fire res splashes onto your cold and lightning, so you can completely not ever worry about cold or lightning res and just focus in on fire res. Later on, this also turns into your max res if you look at Velako Storm's Embrace. This makes it so you can essentially just max your fire res, and that also applies to your cold and lightning res.
That is insanely strong. And I see here that you have the Hinocorus Death Fury as well, which is a huge explosion, and I'm guessing we will ignite with that, just clearing the screen whenever it pops.
Absolutely. One of the few things you need to do to elevate your clear on this character is getting a Fan the Flames Cluster Jewel, or you can go ahead and get Ignite Proliferation on your gloves with Eldritch Currency. It's not like a make or break thing, it's just to help really elevate the clear. The last one to talk about would be Ramako's Sun's Light. It says stationary whenever you're standing still, but it's not actually that bad. It literally counts by a server tick, so in the time it takes for you to throw a fire trap or press a war cry, you're already stationary, and there's a good chance if your build is quite geared, you've already killed the regular targets, proccing the Hinokora, and then chaining the explodes.
So there you have it, guys, and Pox is league starting this himself, so if you want to check in and see the build in action, make sure you check Pox out. He streams loads at league start and is live all the time, and go make sure you give both his YouTube and Twitch some love and subscribe there as well. And big thank you to Pox for doing this collab and just so much work into Righteous Fire, and wonderful to see it come back and still being playable. So hope you guys enjoyed these videos and all the collabs. Thanks so much for watching. Sub to both our channels, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.